It was a lazy Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941. US soldiers were reading in their bunks, tucking into breakfast or outside, enjoying the sunshine. Then chaos. Loud explosions cut through the quiet. Debris, infrastructure, and personnel went flying. Cars exploded. Streets were on fire. The US barracks burst into life. Pearl Harbor was alight. And Battleship Row, 8 battleships of the US Pacific Fleet, were the main targets. But what really happened to each of those ships? And where are they now? Within minutes, thousands of tons of steel were sliding beneath the surface, dragging hundreds of men down with them. Others scrambled for cover or jumped overboard. Bombs exploded in all directions, ripping the ships in half, billowing thick black smoke, a scene of destruction, confusion, and horror. Today, the remains of those battleships are scattered across harbours, test sites, scrapyards, and the deep ocean. 360 aircraft from the Japanese Mobile Strike Force stormed towards Hawaii and Pearl Harbor on that fateful morning. 2 waves of destruction heading straight for the US naval base. Their mission was simple: cripple the American Pacific Fleet. Most of its battleships were concentrated at Pearl Harbor that morning. 8 of the Navy's most powerful warships sat lined up along Battleship Row. Easy targets, sitting ducks. And when the distant drone of aircraft filled the skies, nobody on the ground understood what was happening. Then, the first bombs fell. Within minutes, chaos erupted. USS Arizona suffered the worst fate. Multiple bombs tore through the ship before one final bomb penetrated the forward magazine, where thousands of pounds of ammunition were stored. 7 seconds later, it exploded. The blast tore the battleship apart. 1,177 of her 1,512 crewmen were killed. USS Oklahoma was next. Struck by 8 torpedoes, seawater flooded through her hull as she began to roll. In just 12 minutes, she capsized completely, trapping men inside as she disappeared beneath the water. Some were rescued by their comrades, others never made it out. USS West Virginia and USS California were both sunk at their moorings after being hit by torpedoes and bombs. USS Nevada attempted the impossible, escaping into the open channel. But once exposed, she became a target for the second wave. Struck by as many as 10 bombs, she was forced to run aground but continued fighting back. The remaining battleships, Tennessee, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, survived with varying levels of damage. By the time the attack ended, the Pacific Fleet had suffered a devastating blow. But Pearl Harbor wasn't the end of their stories. Now, the investigation begins. Because what happened beneath the waves was only the start of each ship's story. Following the intense battle, it was a race against time to salvage the ships and get them back out on the water and fight for the Pacific. Some of those attacked on Battleship Row were repaired and restored and back on active duty within months. For others, their stories ended at Pearl Harbor. Her hull lies where she faltered on that fateful day, a silent tribute to the men lost. From above, the eerie shadow of once a great battleship can be seen in the blue-green waters of Pearl Harbor, and a purpose-built memorial sits on top. All 1,177 names engraved on the stone. The US Navy salvaged what they could from USS Arizona. Most was sent for scrap. The main guns and turrets were brought to the surface and erected on the coastline, bolstering defenses. Even in destruction, she continued to serve. Oklahoma sank twice. Lying on her side in the channel, partially submerged, the US Navy believed she could be salvaged after the Pearl Harbor attack. Preparations took 8 months. Improvised airlocks, 21 derricks, and hydraulic winches were used to right the fallen battleship. But once she was repaired, she was deemed too old to serve. Instead, in 1947, she was tugged from Pearl Harbor towards San Francisco, due to arrive on Memorial Day, where the people of Oklahoma would pay their final respects. But tragedy would once again befall USS Oklahoma. A devastating storm struck her 500 miles from the coastline, and in a matter of minutes she began listing heavily, sinking beneath the waves, threatening to drag the two tugboats with her. They released their lines and watched as the battleship disappeared below. Virginia sank at her mooring. 7 torpedoes and 2 bombs had pummeled her hull. But all was not lost. After the Battle of Pearl Harbor, she was brought back to the surface, repaired and extensively modernized. New radar, anti-aircraft guns, and superstructure. She was ready for battle once more. She became the flagship of Battleship Division 4, leading the fleet into the amphibious invasion of the island of Leyte in the Philippines. And in the Philippines she remained, providing anti-aircraft defense and supporting subsequent invasions. In Iwo Jima and Okinawa, she bombarded the shorelines, and when the war was over, she returned US servicemen home from the Pacific in Operation Magic Carpet. In 1959, USS West Virginia was sold for scrap. Her mast, bell, guns and wheel were preserved in museums and memorials. Immediately before the attack on Pearl Harbor, California was preparing for inspection. Watertight doors, portholes and openings were open. When she was struck by 2 Japanese torpedoes, water flooded in. Dive bombers ignited fires on board, and the crew battled to contain them. Over the next 3 days, USS California slowly sank into the shallow harbor mud. But her journey was far from over. She was salvaged and refloated the following year. Major modernizations improved her armor, radar, and weaponry. She could now hold over 2,100 personnel and serve the US Pacific Fleet in their attacks on Saipan, Guam, and Tinian. A collision with USS Tennessee caused the death of 7 crew, but repairs meant she was up and running again and joined the Allies in the liberation of the Philippines. After supporting Americans in the Lingayen Gulf and Okinawa, USS California sailed back to America as part of the fleet returning veterans home. She remained in storage for over a decade, until she was sold for scrap in 1959. Her bronze bell is displayed at the California State Capitol Park. Surrounded by other battleships at Pearl Harbor, USS Tennessee suffered relatively light structural damage compared with others. But an explosion from Arizona covered Tennessee's stern with burning oil, while leaking fuel from West Virginia surrounded her in flames. But once she was repaired and modernized, she joined the Aleutian Islands campaign in 1943. She bombarded Japanese defensive positions using her 14-inch guns against coastal installations, and later supported the Central Pacific campaigns, Mariana and Palau, the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. She destroyed Japanese positions, fortifications, and battleships. She was a steady presence in the Allied fleet, and after the war returned home on the 7th of December, 1945, exactly 4 years after Pearl Harbor. She remained in reserve for 12 years before being sold for scrap. Her only remains, her bell, which was placed on display at the Museum of Scott County in Huntsville. As the Pearl Harbor attack began, crew on board Maryland were eating breakfast or preparing for shore leave. But they jumped into action, shooting down one of the first attacking aircraft. She was largely shielded by Oklahoma, which was moored alongside and whose crew boarded Maryland when Oklahoma sank. She was hit by 2 armor-piercing bombs but continued firing throughout the attack, and her crew launched rescue operations from the other battleships. Following repair, USS Maryland patrolled the western United States, preventing Japanese expansion toward Australia. She became the flagship of Rear Admiral Harry Hill's amphibious force, opening fire before Marines landed in the Battle of Tarawa. She supported invasions of the Marshall Islands, Saipan, the Philippines, and Okinawa. She retired in 1946 and was sold for scrap in 1949. The ship's bell adorns a memorial in the Maryland State House in Annapolis. USS Pennsylvania was relatively undamaged as she lay in dry dock at Pearl Harbor. After repair, she was assigned to the reserve force during the Battle of Midway, and for the remainder of the war she bombarded Japanese positions at Attu and Kiska, narrowly avoided a submarine torpedo attack, and played a significant supportive role in the Central Pacific, Battle of Surigao Strait, the Philippines Campaign, and Okinawa. During her final battle, she was struck by a Japanese torpedo, suffering heavy damage, and becoming the last major US warship damaged in World War II. After the war, she was used as a target ship in the 1946 Bikini Atoll atomic tests, and was scuttled off Kwajalein Atoll in 1948 after radiation and structural studies. Nevada refused to die, so the Navy found another use for her. The final crew weren't sailors. They were goats. She was raised and repaired at Puget Sound Navy Yard in Washington. By October 1942, she was back in the fight, defending Attu Island in Alaska before becoming a guard ship protecting Atlantic convoys. Then came one of her most important missions, D-Day. The only US battleship present at both Pearl Harbor and the Normandy landings, Nevada unleashed her 14-inch guns on German positions, striking targets deep inland and providing vital support for Allied troops on the front line. Months later, she helped break the heavily fortified Big Willie coastal battery near Toulon before returning to the Pacific, bombarding Iwo Jima and supporting the invasion of Okinawa. Even a kamikaze strike couldn't stop her. But after the war, Nevada's fighting days were over. At 32 years old, she had become a relic of a different era. Yet she still had one final mission: Operation Crossroads, a nuclear weapons test designed to reveal what would happen to warships caught in an atomic attack. Painted bright orange and with live goats tethered to her deck, Nevada became the ultimate test subject. The blast failed to destroy her, but the radiation killed the goats just 2 days later. Still refusing to disappear, Nevada survived another live-fire exercise near Pearl Harbor. So the Navy delivered the final blow. An aerial torpedo was dropped onto her hull, and at last she sank. Today, USS Nevada lies on the seabed 15,400 feet below the surface, 65 miles from Pearl Harbor, the place where her journey began. Act 3, Where They Are Now. Now we can finally answer the question that brought us here. Where are Pearl Harbor's 8 battleships today? The 8 battleships of Battleship Row lie in 4 very different places. One still lies beneath the waters of Pearl Harbor, visible through the shimmering surface beneath a white memorial. One disappeared into the Pacific, her exact resting place still unknown. 2 ended their lives as victims of the atomic age, lying on the seabed after nuclear experiments. The rest were cut apart piece by piece. Their steel melted down until only scattered relics remained. Pearl Harbor wasn't the end of their story. It scattered their stories across the world.